obviously, and I am the electronic thesis and dissertation advisor. That's a jumble of words for basically saying that I am here to primarily help you check your formatting for the paper, as well as overseeing the approval process of your work through the ETD platform. So ETD is shorthand for platform that we use to approve your paper for content and formatting, as well as publishing your paper. These are required elements for you to get your degree. And I know that the formatting piece can be a little daunting. So I'm here to hopefully help demystify that a little bit, as well as providing you the resources and information about how to get started as you're writing your paper. So I have a fun little PowerPoint that we'll go through, and then a few links and information. The first thing that I'm going to do is drop in the chat a link to just a nice little cheat sheet for the overall stuff that we'll be discussing, as well as some more complex information about the overall timeline for what you'll need to do when you'll need to finish. And some frequently asked questions about ETD that we will go through during this. So yeah, please send me a message if you have a question as I'm just yapping away, and I will do my best to stop and answer those questions. So yeah, let's get started. Alrighty. So this is that document, but I'll jump into my little PowerPoint here. Okay, so as I said, my name is Molly Scheffler, and my email will be listed in here at the end. Email is the best way to get in touch with me. I am in the office in Morrill Hall a couple of days a week, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from about 12:30 to 3 or 3:30, so you can catch me there. But if you would like to have a meeting or get a question answered quickly, then you just need to let me know, and I will get back to you. So, all right, so this is kind of the overview of what we'll be talking about. I will go over quickly the formatting, the components of your paper that are required, and some of the extra elements that we do. I'm going to be talking to you about the Thesis and Dissertations resources page, which is an excellent resource for you as you're getting started. I will also go through quickly the ETD handbook. For the handbook side of things, it can also operate as a template for you who are using Word. It's preset with all of the formatting settings and all that jazz, so I highly recommend using it. And then I would also recommend to you that if you have not already, please read the handbook. For any of you who are working on it, whatever program you're using, the handbook provides you so much more complex information that we won't have time to go through today, and it is just a phenomenal resource for you. And then we'll talk through some of the frequently asked questions about the ETD system and submission process itself. So again, highly recommend doing that. Yes, I'll pull up where you can find the handbook for you guys in the process, because I want you to go to the thesis and resources page yourself to get familiar with the actual platform. And yeah, it's great. So yeah, we'll get started. For the formatting piece, so some of these are for requirements that come from the platform itself that we use. So the ProQuest system is what we use to publish your paper. Some of the requirements come straight from them. Some of them are for us to ensure that your paper is, oh, thank you, Amanda. Some of that is to make sure that your paper looks as polished and professional as your hard work deserves. And then the other piece of that is to make sure that all of the papers coming from the University of Idaho look uniform to some extent. So Your margins are super important. They're going to be set 1.25 inches from the left and 1 inch on the top, the right, and the bottom. The reason that they are set that way is to ensure that if your paper is printed out and bound, that the binding does not infringe on any of the content in your page. Your page numbers for your portrait pages, which is primarily what you'll be using, are to be in the upper right corner. They're supposed to be about 0.75 inches from the top and 1 inch from the right, except for landscape pages. We will talk briefly about landscape pages as we go, but in my opinion, they're a pain, so if possible, try to avoid them. The page numbers do need to be at that setting because if they're any lower on the page, they start to encroach on the text of the page and it can look a little unpolished. The font of your paper should be anywhere from 10 to 12 point font. Any smaller and it's difficult to read, any larger and it looks a little weird. Kind of looks like you're trying to hit a page mark, which we don't have any requirements as far as the page amount goes. Similarly with the spacing, it should be anywhere from 1.5 to 2 lines separated. Any smaller, and again, it's difficult to read. Any further apart, and it looks, again, like you're in 8th grade trying to hit a page amount. You don't really want to do that. That's not necessary. And then the style of your paper. So that includes doing all elements of your paper. So bolding, spacing, indentation, italicization, all that jazz. So
Hey,
the
Molly.
major rule of the paper is to make sure that whatever you choose to do, you are being consistent throughout the entire paper. So just to double back, we did have a question about the margins for those within the creative arts. If you're doing pieces where you have a lot of images or you have a creative aspect, unfortunately, it's not permitted. You do need to make sure that the margins are 1.25 to the left because again, if you choose to have your paper printed, if you have content within that left margin or anywhere over the margins, it's going to get cut off. So you do have to make sure that everything is within the margins. So just within this list, I'll point out some of the things that I see the most issues with. The first one is the margins. I see a lot of issues with content going over the margins. That is a hard and fast rule. If you do not have the content within the margins, I will send it back. That includes things within a fraction of the inch. I am very, very picky about the margins. I will zoom in to 600% magnification on your paper to make sure that everything is within the margins. So if I tell you it's out of the margins, just go ahead and reduce the size of it. Spacing is another thing that I see a lot of inconsistency about. The spacing means not just the content in between, like the lines of space between the lines of text. This also includes the spacing between sections, between titles and the text below it, between the captions of your content and the actual content that it refers to, all of that stuff. And then the last thing that I see a lot of issues with is consistency with the style. So again, these are all things that I'm meticulously checking for you that I will communicate with you. But just for your own personal reference, that is one of the things that you will want to be particularly aware of is making sure that you're following a consistent style pattern, because a lot of times the style of the paper is how the reader is going to contextualize and understand your information. So particularly for those of you who are writing a dissertation and you're including works that were formatted in different ways for different publications, you will need to change the formatting of that to be one consistent style throughout so that it is comprehensive and it feels like one cohesive work. But again, this is my job, is to check and make sure that this is right and send you notes about it. We will do all that communication about the formatting of your paper through the ETD system. So we won't lose any information in the emails because I don't know about y'all, but I lose emails, I lose documents, all of that stuff. So the ETD platform is really great about keeping all of your past submissions in there, all of the notes that I send you, and you can refer to those all within the ETD system when you go to look at your submission. Okie dokie. Moving on, the components of your paper, and this is the order that they appear in. I need to do a little tweaking to the handbook because that's not quite right in there, but I will get that fixed and up there for you ASAP. So the preliminary pages, so these are all of the pages that come before the main body of your paper. You're going to have a title page. You will have an abstract page, and those are required. The acknowledgements pages and the dedication page. So the acknowledgements page is where you can say thank you to your committee, your fellow academic cohort, anybody who in a professional or academic capacity has helped you along the way. This is not the place for personal thank yous. Any personal thank yous, such as family, faith, friends, your dog. I've seen thank yous to the dog on the dedication page. Anybody who's helped you in a personal way get to this point, that is on your dedication page. So again, acknowledgements is professional thank yous, dedication is personal thank yous. Following that, you will have a table of contents. That is where you can provide as much or as little information about the overall appearance or basically the point of reference for you guys and for the reader about what information is within the body of the paper. So yes, Neil, to answer your question, you do have to reformat the paper if it's already been published to fit within the formatting guidelines of our requirements, as well as allowing for a comprehensive overall paper. So you don't want it to look like it's just a compilation of different chapters from different places. You want it to appear as one cohesive work. And again, that's something I'll be checking for and communicating with you as you go along. So then you'll move into your lists. Your lists refers to the list of tables and figures. For those of you working with a lot of equations, you'll need to have a list of equations and numbered for the reader's reference. And that, again, we'll go through this when I show you the ETD handbook. It has a nice little compilation of all this information. And then after your lists, you would have an introduction. If you want to have an introduction to the paper, it should not be the first part of your main body of paper. It should be one of the preliminary pages. All of the preliminary pages are to be numbered in a different way than the content within the main body of the paper. So the page numbers on your preliminary pages are going to be lowercase Roman numerals. And then when you switch to the chapters, they're going to be Arabic numerals starting at 1. So you will go through the preliminary pages and then you will start at 1 for your chapters. Sometimes Word, when you're using Word, will just read those first preliminary page numbers and then it will start you at like page 11 or something like that. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that your page numbers are starting at 1 with the chapters. Again, this is all in the handbook for your reference. So you go through your chapters. The information within the body of the paper, the content, that is all to be determined on your end with your committee or your major professor. I don't really have any oversight on any of the content in the paper. So you'll be working with them to make sure that that is all hunky-dory. We don't really have any oversight or requirements on what you include in the actual paper. That is determined by you. Following your chapters, then you will have a references section. If, for those of you who are deciding to write longer papers or have more complex information, you are absolutely allowed to do a reference section at the end of each chapter. Should you rather do that than have one big references section at the very end. And then following your references section, you will have any appendices that you would like to include. And that's pretty much it. That's what's in your paper. And if there's a whole lot of other stuff within that. But that's just a general overview. Again, if you have questions that are more particular, please just let me know. Okay, so we're going to go to the thesis and dissertation resources page. This is one of my favorite pages in the entire U of I website because it has all of the information that you need in order to get started right here on one page. So can everybody see this okay? I'm gonna scooch us over to a little bit. Okay, so the thesis and dissertation resources page. So I'll draw your attention first to the middle of the page. Again, you can find this. It was dropped in the chat, but you can also find this by typing in thesis or dissertation resources, or even just thesis and dissertation, and it's one of the links that comes up. So it has a link for you to create your ETD account. That is where you will submit your paper for formatting checks, and that's how we'll approve the paper. General help from ProQuest. ProQuest is the platform that we use. We got the template here, you got the template over here. It's easy use. I do want to just give a shout out to anybody who is using LaTeX to write this paper. First of all, congratulations, you are much smarter than me. LaTeX is a very complicated program to use, and we do not currently have a template for LaTeX. We are exploring options for that. We don't really have a template or anybody who can give you hands-on assistance with actually using LaTeX. So please, please, please use your fellow students, your major professor, anybody who's more familiar with the program itself to figure out how to use it. I know that many departments do have a kind of standard template for LaTeX that they pass around. So feel free to reach out to anybody within your department for more information about that. Like I said, LaTeX can be a complicated system to use, so please bear with me as I give you notes. It can create some tricky issues, but we will tackle it together. There are a few more informational links, including the writing assistance services. This is just a link to my information, all that jazz. And then, yes, again, over here, you have a bunch of great guides and documents, including the handbook, which is either a reference point in PDF or the Word doc, which you can use as a template. Quickly, I would like to go over to the dates and deadlines page. I want you all to be very familiar with this. So the dates and deadlines for this process are self-enforced. So they are based on the academic calendar and based on the average amount of time that we typically see for the approval process. So I'm just gonna scooch us over here. You click on that and then you'll go down to theses and dissertations. And this is a fabulous reference for you about the steps you'll need to take at the end when you are writing your paper and getting ready to graduate. This information is all included in the document that I dropped in at the very beginning. For those of you who just got here, there is a document in there that says ETD FAQs. This is all detailed out there a little bit more particularly, but I just want to draw your attention to this beautiful little table that we have here. So this has all of the dates and deadlines for the upcoming semesters. So if you are not graduating in fall, that's awesome. Good for you for being here early. This just gives you a little bit more information about the dates and deadlines that we have. I just want to clarify a couple of different notes on here. So again, I go into detail in the document that I have, but the request to proceed is primarily important for the dissertation writers, but if you are a thesis writer, please be aware of these two. You do have to request to proceed with your defense by a certain time in the semester in order to meet this last day to defend. So for those of you writing a dissertation, you are required to submit your request to proceed at least 2 weeks prior to your defense date. This is because For our purposes, we are required to advertise your defense to the academic community at large for at least 10 business days prior to your defense. That is a really hard and fast rule. So these dates here reflect the very last day that you can request to proceed if you're going to defend during the semester. So for instance, for fall 2024, the last day to request to proceed, if you're a dissertation person, in conjunction with the last day to defend, is 2 weeks prior to that. If you are defending before the last day to defend, you still have to submit your request to proceed 2 weeks prior to that date. For the thesis writers, you've got a little bit of an easier time. I've seen them submitted on the same day. Don't do that, but I have seen them submitted on the same day. So just make sure that you are requesting to proceed in proper time before you're actually going to defend. So again, the last day to defend is the last day that you are able to defend during the semester in order for you to finish on time. This COGS and ETD approval, this is sometimes what people get hung up on because they don't know what that means. So I'm here to tell you, that's me. So just as we go through, you will have to have your paper approved for formatting before it can be sent to your committee and your department head for their final approval. Their approval through the ETD system is a requirement. We used to do this physically, so you had to physically bring in a copy to have us, with all the signatures and everything. Now we just do everything through ETD. So again, sorry to everyone. Oh, the page number shift. Okay, so I'm going to go through and answer a couple of these extra questions. The page number shift is set up in the document. But again, that is something that you can learn more about within the ETD handbook. It's preset, but I can give you more details if you are having issues with it as you go. If you're defending in spring, what day do you recommend we proceed? We request to proceed. If you are a thesis person, oh, thank you, Amanda. You answered that question. Yeah, so before 4/4, basically. You can absolutely submit that earlier if you figure out what your defense date is. And no, sorry, Jason, there is not a LaTeX template, but I would ask your department. So again, I have to approve before everybody can hop in there and approve on the committee side and department head side for the content. So this date right here, for the regular semesters, so fall and spring, that is 2 weeks prior to the actual deadline they have to approve. The reason that you have to be done with all content and formatting edits 2 weeks prior is because I don't know if you've met faculty members, but they're very busy and they oftentimes do not have time to jump right in and approve your paper as soon as they get the link for it. So on average, I would say committees take about 1 to 1.5 weeks to approve a paper. You do not want to push that any further. So you want to make sure that you are done with sufficient time for them to get in there and approve. I bug them all the time to make sure that we miss the deadlines. I very rarely have anybody miss the deadlines. But again, that is because you really have to try and follow these deadlines, get everything approved in time. The other thing I just want to quickly mention is, so obviously, the later into the semester, the busier I get. So this is a part-time position. I work full-time hours during the end of the semester, but I am, and as fast as I am and as meticulous as I am, if I have 20 to 30 papers in the queue to get through, there's only so much time in a day. So if you are anticipating that you're going to be kind of at the end of it and you are aiming for this very last day for me to approve, you need to submit your work to me with the final edits and everything done at least 48 hours beforehand. That is the goal. Again, I'm very fast, but I am only one person. And again, we've never had an issue with getting everything done, but there is a note up here that says, the final version of your document ETD. This is the fully revised book content and format version that will be published online needs to be approved by this day. If you do not submit at least 48 hours prior to this deadline for Cox to review and approve your document, there's no guarantee they can grant the approval before the semester deadline. So I have had students misunderstand this before and not submit their paper on for the first time until 48 hours prior. That's not what this means. This means you need to be done with everything. We should have been communicating for a good amount of time, and you will want to make sure that you are done with everything by that time frame. I saw a question in the chat, but I don't see it anymore. So Amanda, do you see what that question was? Sorry, I don't see my option anymore.
Yes, it says, am I supposed to get full approval from professors before the request to proceed?
Full approval on the research, yes, and you will have done stuff leading up to that. You'll do prelims. You will typically in the department, there is a process by which they give you the go-ahead to proceed with your defense, and then you will submit the form. But as far as approval on the overall content, no, you do not need to wait for them until that point. They will be checking in with you to make sure you're on track. But the approval of your final content does not happen until after the defense, because a lot of times they will have edits that they want you to do after the defense, or they'll note things during the defense that they'll ask you to do. That is a great question too, because again, during the process, so your paper could be perfect for formatting. It could be gorgeous. I could be like, yes, this is beautiful, but I want to approve the paper for formatting until after your defense and you've given me the go-ahead. So when I approve the paper for formatting in ETD, it will automatically initiate the approval process for your committee and your department head. And we don't want that sent to them until you are done with everything. So once you and I have gone back and forth and you're done with your defense and I see that last document, if I think it's good, I'm going to send you an email directly. Not through the ETD system. I'll send you an email through Outlook and I will say, hello, this paper looks beautiful. Are you done? Are you ready for it to be sent to your committee and department head? I will never send the paper to them until you give me the go-ahead. That is one thing you want to be aware of and looking for during this process, because again, if I don't hear back from you giving me the go-ahead to approve the paper, I'm not going to approve it. I'm not going to send it until you give me the go-ahead. Okay, great. There's that question. Okay, so that's, again, the dates and deadlines. This is on the sheet that I dropped in the chat earlier, but I just want you guys to be aware of this page because it is very, very important. Okay. Oh, just kidding. We're going to go to the handbook. All right. Everybody's favorite document. So I'm going through this in PDF, but again, this is a Word document for you. For those of you using Word, for those of you using LaTeX, this is a great reference point. And so you will just want to follow the questions or requirements in here. Great question, Edward. What happens if there's not content approval until quite a while after the defense? That means that you will probably have to delay the degree date that you're aiming for. So if you defend in, say November, and you still have quite a lot of editing to do or quite a lot of content edits that they would like to do, then you will likely have to delay your degree date. You should be done with all of the content by the time that they need to approve. So I see that happen quite often. No big deal. Just a couple of notes about that. First of all, you have to be done with the approval of your paper 6 months in range of your defense. So if you defend in November, but you're not going to finish until summer, you are going to need to do some things, either petition or redefend to ensure that you're within that 6-month window. The other thing is that you do have to be a registered student in the semester that you are going to graduate. There are a couple of allowments for that if you're going to meet deadlines for what was the no registration deadlines on the thesis and dissertation kind of grid that we have. If you meet those deadlines, you don't have to be a registered student. Yeah, Eric, I would recommend getting content approval this semester. I would start working on this as soon as possible because, again, if you're delayed for an extended point of time after you defend, and you're not going to be done with content edits within that semester, you're not going to be able to meet the deadlines. So I would recommend getting this information, getting the go ahead all that time. Okay, and then for clarification, I would need to submit the document to COGS ETD, but the submission and approval for the committee and department will be done by you. So I am COGS ETD. That's me. So you will submit to ETD for me to check, and then I will oversee the approval process within ETD for that time. So I am COGS ETD. That is me. If you see a document like your repository agreement or your final defense form that has a section for the sign off from COGS, that's me. I sign those documents. So I oversee the whole process and work with you on the formatting and then the approval process at the end. So just to quickly go through this, we're not going to go through the whole thing, but I do want to just show you a couple of highlights. So here is the title page. These sections right here that are highlighted is where you're going to change the text. So you're going to change this to your title. If it's a dissertation, awesome. If it's a thesis, write thesis in there. Then you're going to write in your degree. So for the majority of you doing a dissertation, it's Doctor of Philosophy. For those of you who are getting your master's, it would be degree of Master of Science or degree of Master of Arts, something like that. Yep, Edward, that should be fine. Get approval in December, but plan to defend in March. That's awesome. That's a great timeline. You'll want to make sure, again, that the content that you're going to be doing is okay with your committee and department head. But you'll work with them on making sure that that's okay. And then your major, you're going to put in your major on here. That is your overall major. It's not your specialty. And then just to highlight, you are graduating from the College of Graduate Studies, not from the specific college that you are within. So sometimes I see people write in like College of Natural Resources or something like that for this section. So I'll have you swap that if you do that because you're graduating from the College of Graduate Studies. And then obviously you write your name. Right here is the approved by section. So this is for you to input your major professor, your committee members, and then your department administrator. What is a department administrator? Department administrator is kind of a catch-all term because no one department calls the head of their department the same thing. It's department head, department chair, department director, all sorts of things. So department administrator is to refer to the overall person who heads up your department. It's just a catch-all term. Sometimes I have seen people write in the administrative assistant within their department. That's not who's going to be approving your paper. It will be your department head. And then this date right here refers to the date of the month that you will be receiving your degree. For anybody who's writing their paper right now and you're planning to graduate in fall, this should say December 2024. It is not the date that you are writing the paper. And then again, I'm not going to go through the actual content on these pages. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you read them. But just to scroll through, here is your abstract page. As you can see, the page number right up here is starting at 2. Why is that? Because this is technically page number 1. You do not want a page number showing on your title page. So they will start at 2. Again, the handbook is preset with all of this information in there. Okay, this right here, don't break the template. That's my highest recommendation to you. If you break the template, start over with a new one. Okay, I'm not seeing a form if you're referencing one. I'm not seeing a form if you're referencing one. I am not sure what form you guys are referring to. If you're referring to the repository agreement, I can show you that. I will talk about it later in ETD FAQs. If you're talking about the final defense form, then the final defense form will be rendered to you after you submit your request to proceed. we are only seeing the graduate handbook. Yep, that's what I'm showing you right now is the graduate handbook. So can you be a little bit more specific about what the form you're asking about is? And I will jump right in and let you know. Okay, again, acknowledgements page. This is for professional thank yous. Dedication page. Dedication page is to be
Hi.
centered on the paper. Yes.
Can you go to the formatting so we are seeing the only graduate handbook only?
Yep. So that's what I'm supposed to, are you only seeing that are you only seeing
Yes.
a slide and you're not seeing the graduate handbook?
No.
Okay, great. Let me try again. Do, 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 do. Okay, here we go.
We're still only seeing graduate handbook. Oh,
Are we
never
seeing
mind.
it now?
Yep, you're good. Yep, got it.
Perfect. Okay. So again, now to show you what I'm actually showing you. This is the handbook. This section right up here is the title, dissertation, Dr. Philosophy. Again, this is the stuff you're going to be writing over. Here is your abstract page. Again, highly recommend you read it. Again, as you can see up here in the right corner is the number lowercase Roman numeral 2. And so that is what you're going to want to start your pages at. Here is your acknowledgements page. The acknowledgements page and the dedication are not required. I very rarely see without them. So it's up to you as to whether or not you'd like to thank people, but this is where you would do it. Here's the dedication page. As I thank you guys so much for letting me know. Here's the dedication page. As you can see, this looks slightly different. It's because the dedication page should be centered both vertically and horizontally on the page. I will have you fix this if it's not quite right. And yeah, that is to make it stand out. We really want to highlight those personal thank yous. Here is your table of contents. Again, this is preset, but there's a lot of great information in the handbook as to how to edit, adjust, all of that jazz. You'll want to have a dotted line between each line and the page number so that it's easy to read for the reader. Scroll, scroll, scroll. So here, like I said earlier, we are going to have you do a list for each of the pieces of visual content that you have. So list of tables, pretty self-explanatory. And again, these are preset to auto-populate with the captions that you use, but try not to break the template. If you do, there's troubleshooting information in here and online for you to fix that. List of figures, again, self-explanatory. One thing I do want to mention on the list of figures and the list of tables. So you can see this is numbered table 2.1. This one is labeled figure 1.1, figure 1.2, and then it goes to figure 2.1. You are permitted to number your content as however you want. If you would like to number it 1 through 7 or 8 or something like that, that's totally fine. If you want to number everything by chapter, that is also totally fine. You just have to make sure that you are numbering it based on the accurate number. So for instance, figure 1.1 appears in chapter 1. Figure 2.1 appears in chapter 2, and so on. Hop in the chat. Do we need to list a table and figure from the appendix? Absolutely. As you can see here, table B.1. So this is in appendix B. So you are going to label it based on the appendix that appears in instead of the chapter number, should you decide to do that. If you are going to number them 1 through whatever, then you do not need to specifically indicate the appendix. But yes, you do need to include content in your appendices within a list of tables or a list of figures. And I will note that and let you know. Just quickly, we'll talk about a statement of contribution. This page does not apply to everyone, but for those of you who are including multi-authored works that you've submitted that you had co-authors on, you will need to include a statement of contribution page. This should be probably the last page within your preliminary pages. It's to follow the lists. If you're going to do an introduction, then it should be before the introduction. But again, I'll keep an eye on that for you. But you will need to complete this if you have works within the paper that you are submitting with co-authors. And so the content of this page should be determined by you and your major professor to ensure that you are properly noting your contributions and the contributions of others. Please delete this page if it does not apply to you. Okay, Edward, I am going to jump on that after we go through the rest of the handbook. Okay, so as you can see, the chapter Introduction, Preparing Your Dissertation or Thesis. So you can see the page numbers start at 1. They are preset for that again, but if you have any issues, I can help troubleshoot it. Just quickly, if you are including one of those papers that is co-authored, that you've submitted for publication someplace, this is how you should cite it. So you will have your chapter title, and then underneath it, you will have the citation for that chapter. You will need to be using content that has already been submitted to a journal if you are going to include it in your paper. If you do not have any information yet as to whether or not the paper has been accepted, then you do not want to include any information about that specific journal, because we can't predict whether or not you are going to actually have it accepted. So we will talk about that in more detail on a personal, one-on-one basis, and I will work with you on that. Just quickly, here is some contact info for me and for the people who work in Morrill Hall that will help go through things with you. And please note, this is something I just want to highlight because we are breaking the rules here. You are not permitted to use active web links within the paper. I will tell you to deactivate them if they are in there. This is the blue underlined links that sometimes come through. We are including them in this because we want you to have links to the information that we have in here. Do as we say, not as we do. These pages have a lot of good information about the actual formatting of the document, a way more detailed description than I am giving you in this short time. I've already been yapping way too long. So please read this carefully. And then this just goes through the organization of the paper. I'm going to tap right through. Here is the ETD section where it gives you more information about that. We are going to go over some FAQs if I can stop talking. But this has a lot more information about the process as you upload and go through, and then the framework of how the paper gets approved. And then that's the end. I just quickly want to go to the landscape pages. So a landscape page, look at it here. I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. First of all, landscape pages are a pain in the butt. But if you have to use them, you have to make sure that they are formatting so that if the paper was printed out and bound, the details of it are set so that they automatically match the portrait pages, because you're not going to have a printed out landscape page. It's not going to be landscape oriented in a printed document. So you have to make sure that the margins are set properly and that the page number is in the correct location. So the margins, instead of having 1.25 inches on the left, you have 1.25 inches on the top. And then also, and this is the big issue usually that I see, is this page number. So the page number has to be in the lower right corner as opposed to the upper right corner. And it should be rotated like this so that the top of the number is pointing to the right side of the page. The landscape pages are one of the things I've seen many a fabulous student be hung on by a landscape page because they can't quite get it right. So if all else fails, my recommendation to you is to rotate any of the content you're trying to fit on a landscape page. So instead of it being landscape orientation, you'd rotate it so that it is portrait orientation and can fit on a portrait page, so you don't have to mess with it. I've seen people take screenshots, I've seen people reduce the size of tables to fit on there. That's my recommendation to you, but again, I will work with you on that as much as I possibly can. And that's it. Again, I need to fix this because your literature cited pages should be a little bit early up, but I will fix this and make sure that it is updated on the website. So, all right, done with that. Please make sure that you are working with the handbook as much as possible. Okay. Oh, shoot. Clearly, I am great at this. Okay. So we've gone through the handbook, gone through the resources page. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right page. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry, everyone. All right. Make sure, is everybody seeing this great slide that has ETD FAQs on it? Hopefully, yes. Okay, great. I am so sorry, Sarah. I could not hear you. Could you?
Sorry, I came off mute. You're good.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry. Okay. ETD FAQs. So this is written out in much more detail in the sheet that I shared with you guys. We will also have this in the office if you need, or if you would like the sheet and you couldn't access it, please just let me know. I couldn't share the file itself from the Zoom, so I dropped a link, but again, if you want that information, then it is all there for you. I have it printed out like a nerd right here. So this has a bunch of, you can't see. I'll just read it to you. Okay. ETD FAQ. So this is stuff that I see a lot of people get held up on or get confused about during the process that either prevents them from submitting their work in a timely manner, or they are unfamiliar with the system. So here you go. When should I submit my paper for formatting checks? The real answer is as soon as possible. So as soon as you have a decent draft of your paper, even if you're not finishing in the semester you submit it, go ahead and submit it, because the sooner you start to work on the formatting, the easier it will be for you towards the end. I also want to just reiterate, the later into the semester it gets, the busier I am and the longer it will take for me to get back to you. So the sooner you submit the paper, the faster I can get back to you, and the faster we can work out any kinks. It's also a lot easier to make these edits to your paper as you're writing it, rather than trying to apply the formatting fixes that you'll need to do after you've completed it. So I would say as soon as you have a decent draft of your paper, doesn't even have to be completed yet, go ahead and submit the paper and I will give it the once over. So as soon as possible, but at the very least 2 weeks before your defense. So by the time you have a defense date, you should have a decent draft of your paper pretty much done. But you really, really should, and we say this in the communication that you get after you submit your request to proceed, you need to have your paper in for formatting checks before you defend, because the later you wait to get the formatting fixes in, the higher the chances that you will not finish in the semester that you're aiming for. Is my ETD submission final? No, it's not. When you go through the submission process, it's going to feel a little scary. It's going to feel very final. You're going to hit the submit button and you're going to be like, oh my God, it's going to everybody. It's not done yet. No, that's not the case. You can submit your paper to me with the worst paper ever, and it will only come to me. In fact, it is literally not possible for you to send your paper to anybody other than me, because I am the gatekeeper. And so when you submit to me, it is only coming to me, only I am able to see it, and then the only way that your committee and department head can see it is when I approve the paper and it's sent to them. So that will be the final version of the paper. However, if you don't submit the paper, if you just leave it in draft, saved, setting, or whatever, I can't see it. I don't get notified by it. I don't know that you've submitted it for checks, so you do have to fully submit it. I promise you, it will be okay. Go ahead and submit it, and I will help you fix anything that needs to be fixed. Okay, so like it says here, you can swap it out as many times as you need. What does that mean? Do I create a new submission to ETD every single time I revise the paper? No, don't do that. Please don't do that. So when you submit a revision to the paper, you're going to go into your original submission and replace the document and then click submit again. So if you created a new submission every single time you revised your paper, I would have hundreds of different submissions every single semester. We would get confused. We would go all over the place. So if for any reason that does happen, I will email you and I'll be like, hey, don't do this. I'm going to withdraw one of these submissions because I only want to be working with you on one submission. So again, you will go in and replace the document when you submit the revised version. You will not create a new submission. I am required to upload a repository agreement with my ETD submission. Those would have to be completed and signed before I submit my paper. No, it does not. So one of the things that holds people up is they are waiting to get the repository agreement signed by their major professor. You do not have to do that. Please do not let that hold you up from submitting your paper, because some people have said, well, you know, I couldn't get this signed, so that's why I'm later in submitting the paper. It does not matter. You can, again, replace any of the documents within your submission as many times as you need. So it can be submitted blank. I've seen people submit blank pieces of paper as their repository agreements before. And you should be able to go in and swap it out later. To be clear, you do have to have that completed by the time we're going through the approval process, and I'll hound you about that. But if you are wanting to submit and you don't have that done yet, that is a-okay. When we're talking about the repository agreement, what is on it is information about the publication of your paper in the University of Idaho repository, which is one of your publishing options. What are publishing options and what should I choose? So as you're going through the submission process, there are publishing options that it's going to ask you to select 2 different times. It's going to ask you to select your PQ publishing options and your IR publishing options. PQ stands for ProQuest, so that is the ProQuest repository that we publish your work on. And then IR stands for Institutional Repository. That's the U of I repository. So again, that's how the paper is published, and you're going to select those through the ETD submission process. Oops, sorry. Let's go back. Okay. Just a little bit more detail about that. Sorry, I know I'm rambling. When you are selecting that, you're going to be asked whether or not you want it to be available immediately or whether or not you would like it to be held. So we call that an embargo, but it's basically if you have work that you are hoping to be published and you don't want to have a conflict of interest, or you have patent pending on certain things, whatever the case may be, you can select to hold the paper for a certain amount of time, up to 2 years for people who are in most programs. Up to 2 years is how long we have to do it. There are some special circumstances for some people, but for the majority of people, 2 years is sufficient amount of time. When you're selecting these publishing options, they all need to match. So there are 3 places you're going to indicate whether or not you need an embargo: the repository agreement, your publishing options for your institutional repository, and the publishing options for the ProQuest repository. They all need to match. If you mess that up, that's okay. We can fix it after the fact, but I will at some point make you decide whether or not you want it embargoed, for how long. If it says 6 months for one and a year for the other, that's not permitted because there's no point in embargoing it for a shorter amount of a short amount of time than for another, because then it'd be available at one place and then not available later, but people could still access it. So just as a quick note for those of you, if anybody is in the creative arts, there is an option, particularly for creative writing, to embargo it for a much longer amount of time. Please consult with your major professor or your committee about getting the documentation you need to do that. Okay, and final question. Should I be making purchases and paying money during this process? No, there is an option to select open access publishing. It is $95. Unless that is something that you are really passionate about and you have $95 to throw out there, or it's something that your committee or department head or advisor would like you to do, that's okay. I've seen a few people do it, but it is not something that is required in any way, shape, or form. The only thing people typically do, if they want to, is to purchase bound copies of the paper. So you can purchase those during the submission process. Couple of notes about your bound copies. Should you purchase them? Number one, the paper that will be bound and printed is the final approved published version. It will not be any iteration of it before that. But secondly, purchases cannot be added retroactively. So make that decision as you're going into the submission. If you decide later on that you would like to have it printed, but you're so far into the process, you don't want to start over, you can order bound copies from the University of Idaho print shop. They have all that information on the thesis and dissertations. I think it's on the resources page, but if not, just look up UI print shop and you can work with them to get that printed. And then, Edward, I'm going to jump in and answer that question you had real quickly. Okay, if we don't get content approval until February and plan to defend in March, I don't know. Content is all up to y'all. So any of the process by which you get the content approved, whether you get the go-ahead from your department to move forward with it, whatever the case, that's all on the content side, which we don't have any oversight on. So you just need to make sure that you're in close communication with the people who will be determining that leading up to the defense date. And again, that's usually something that they have strategies and like processes by which they work with you on a departmental level. So. Okay,
And I was going to ask,
yeah, sure.
you seem to imply to be fine, but so as you know, I'm currently working on a book that is also functioning as my thesis. And what happens if I have content? So, for example, in the thesis itself, there are certain differences that differentiate it from a book. Most notably, you have to have a kind of summary of what's going to be in each individual chapter, right? And that is very different from an actual book, which is just sort of written out material instead. Is it all right if I obtain content approval for this book version without those kinds of abstracts if I am to, for this process?
Great question. Not one I've ever had before. So I think that that should be fine. Again, I don't really have any oversight about the content itself. We just need to see some form of following the formatting requirements. So like I said, you need to have an abstract, but as far as like a summary of the information within the paper, that is the primary thing that you're required to have. Any other information about that is really up to you and the committee as far as what meets their requirements. But I'm seeing your work as almost like a kind of a combination of what I often see with the creative writing, where creative writings are some of my favorite papers to go through because a lot of it is just up to you as to how things appear in the content. And I don't read the content of your papers. I'm so sorry. I actually might read yours, Edward, because it sounds very interesting. But for the most part, I don't have time to go through any of the content itself. So if there are certain things within your department that you're required to do, or certain things for the actual book or the other publication that you're working with, you'll just need to make sure that it meets those requirements. But I don't care. I think that whatever you do is going to be fabulous. So yes. And Edward, if you have further questions or you need more clarification, go ahead and send me an email. I'm sorry. Your situation is so interesting and complex that I just want to make sure I have enough focus and time to get to what we need to talk about. So again, I am so sorry I just rambled on, but if anybody has any other questions or anything, I do just want to let you know you have the writing center that can help you with the writing and the format. I mean, not the formatting. They can go over the content with you and make sure that it's all lined out and properly organized and all that jazz. And they do have my information and a lot of the information that I've shared with y'all. so that if you have questions over there that are more pertinent for me, they know to send you to me and vice versa. So again, that's it. That's the whole thing. I'm so sorry. I just rambled on, but if you guys have any questions, then please let me know. Edward, I'm so sorry. Let me go back. Here, let me scroll down to the page. Anyway. Sorry, my computer does not really appreciate all the stuff I'm trying to make it do. I just want to make sure you guys see my information here at the end. Oh, come on. Whatever, I'll send it to you. Again, my email is mscheffler@uidaho.edu. I will drop it in the chat. Any more questions, you'll just reach out to me there. Again, I'm in the office sometimes, but easiest and best way to get in touch with me is through email, and I almost always have time to do a quick Zoom call. There's questions that you have beyond that. No, Edward, I don't think you guys need a review. That's not something that I have checked over or looked or anything like that. Again, if you have questions about that, I would recommend talking to somebody just to make sure, somebody within your department just to make sure. Does anybody have any more questions? I'm sorry I've kept you over time. I know that this is a lot of information to take in, but I am here to hopefully make sure that this is the least painful formatting process, even though I will be a bit of a stickler, but I'm here to help you navigate this and look at it when you're going cross-eyed. So that's what I'm here for. Any other questions?